Hello and welcome. My name is Sanjay Soni. Here's a microlearning readiness video. So Bob, I've heard it's very hard to understand anything about containers or Kubernetes.
That is such a myth. Actually, containers are a lot more simple than people think they are. Yeah. But I want to tell you one quick secret. You just said SQL 17 today and SQL 19 tomorrow. Yeah. I've been sneaking in some 19 stuff on you when you didn't realize it because of the great story of SQL Linux and containers running in both. So when I show you containers today, I might even just run it on 19 just to prove to you I can do it, right? But it runs on SQL 17. So yeah, people they overcomplicate containers, which is understandable. It's new technology to SQL people. It's been around for a little bit. As it turns out, we'll talk about Kubernetes. That's been around a little bit too. But it's really new for us as a system. And one of the reasons why is that Linux is really the operating system that kind of started the container movement. And so we just started SQL on Linux and SQL 17, right? But you take a look at this slide right here. This kind of gives you an idea, my overview about why containers and why it's different a little bit. So first of all, just look on the left-hand side. Just think about why you would even do something like this. First of all, container images, that's how you start using an image, are very portable. Okay, I'm a sneakernet guy. Do you even know what that is? Sneakernet. Sneakernet is an old school thing where if the network went down, we would just take diskettes and walk around in the room and just hand it around. Sneakernet,
Simple solution.
Simple solution. So imagine taking SQL Server on a USB stick. Anywhere to any conference in the world, popping it in your computer, and I can just run SQL. Whether on Mac, Windows, or Linux. I can literally take a USB stick to a Mac user, give it to them, and I run SQL Server now. So portable, because these images are consistent, and we really kind of focus on using Docker as a container system. And anywhere Docker runs, which is on these popular systems, right? Linux, Mac, and Windows, and in the cloud, you can run a SQL image. It's the same image. That's one thing. Number two, it's lightweight. So it doesn't replace VMs.
Yes.
I think that's the question.
That is the question, right?
Is that a question
when do they use VMs versus containers?
It's a fair question. Think about a customer that runs a VM farm today with SQL Server, right? The VMs themselves are great. They provide isolation to all these SQL instances, but they're pretty heavy. You have to install the entire guest operating system in with SQL Server in order to run SQL. Well, as it turns out, you might not need everything in the operating system itself to run SQL. That's possible, but you still have to put the whole OS in there. Take your VM farm, right? Take maybe running less VMs, but put a bunch of containers in the VMs. So don't think in terms of containers replacing VMs. They're going to supplement them and make them more efficient. You can run containers on bare metal Linux systems, but it's often you're going to see them, like in Kubernetes scenarios, to run multiple containers inside a virtual machine.
I see, like compressed containers in a big VM. Okay.
Absolutely. Now, why is that? Why are they lightweight? Because it turns out what they are is just a set of processes. So if you run multiple SQL Server containers, which is, by the way, that's how you do multi-instance for SQL and Linux. You run multiple containers. When you do that, each of these SQL processes run in what's called their own namespace. It's an isolation model that the kernel provides, right, in Linux, but they're not VMs. They're separate SQL processes. They don't know about each other, so they're isolated. But you still can communicate with them because you got to connect to SQL and so forth. But that really what it comes down to. It's reduced disk footprint, CPU and memory, because of the fact that I can condense and build multiple of these containers in one virtual machine. So that's the second thing, right? The third is consistency. This is one of the stories, and you look at the thing down here about DevOps, right? That's a big hot topic out in the industry out there. My colleague Vin Yu, he just has some amazing demos about CI/CD and DevOps. You can look him up on the internet about
Vin Yu?
Vin Yu.
Oh yeah, of course.
He's the container guy. Everything, so Vin's so funny. I'll do something with him inside the office, and he's like, Bob, how come you're not using a container? Like, he pushes me to do everything with containers, and I love it because it stretches me and how containers could be useful. But think about the consistency. So you got these SQL images out there that have SQL Server different CUs and 17 and then new 19 previews. That's a consistent image of SQL Server. Now you could combine that with a SQL database or a set of scripts. So consider this scenario. You got a dev server with SQL that you share with a bunch of devs. You're the DBA that they ask you to manage the dev server, and they're constantly tearing it up. Like they're changing configurations on it, and you never can get a consistency of all this development on this dev SQL server. So forget that world with containers now. You just give devs a container image of SQL plus a series of database scripts with your schema and say, go test on that, dev on that. And everybody can do it at their desktop or their server. So you have a consistent story now of using things, and this is very common in the DevOps world, and now we're just putting SQL into that fold. Efficiency. So I'm going to tease you and say, let's talk about that later, but I'm going to give you an amazing new patch experience for SQL, which I'm kind of hinting to on this right-hand side, how you can switch containers and you can upgrade and patch SQL in a new and different way. So I'm going to tease you and tell you I'm going to do that one a little bit later, okay?
I see, of course. So let's touch upon like what's so special in terms of containers within SQL Server?
Yeah, so containers have been in there for a while, and people use container images for very different reasons. If you think about SQL Server, what we've done, because what you do is, again, you start with an image, which is a binary file, and then when you start an image, you're running a container. That's the differences, or that's how you can think of these technologies. So what we have is we have something called new from Microsoft called the Microsoft Container Registry. All the products, all the people inside Microsoft as a company are publishing their images in this container registry. Now, Docker Hub and Red Hat Container Catalog are very popular places for people to find containers, so we syndicate from there. So you're going to find all our images on this registry in Microsoft, but then you can go out in Docker and Red Hat and see ours as well, and we'll just redirect you to this registry. So that's where you go get these things. It's like pulling a package for Linux. You go get your image from these public registries. For SQL 17, we have Ubuntu-based images, and then just like the Linux experience, we have an RTM version, and then every cumulative update, or GDR, we have a separate image for you to run. That's going to become important when I show you this patching methodology. Right now, that package includes the MS SQL Server tools and the server itself as one bundled thing you get together. And then for 19, we've actually added now Red Hat images at Ubuntu, and it's the same thing, SQL Server and tools. But what's the big deal about this? Like, what is the real big promise of why I would use a container for SQL Server? It's pre-installed. So SQL Server is already installed for you. I think that's crazy and amazing. You saw the deployment Linux experience, and you sat there and go, I don't believe you. I don't believe you did it. Well, you wait till you see the container experience. SQL Server pre-installed so that we could start the engine in a matter of seconds. So you don't do any installation of SQL Server now. Everything's for you, all the binaries all laid out for you, and then you should configure it. You configure it later. And then you might want to, remember I mentioned those other packages, SSIS or extensibility and machine learning. There's techniques where you can build your own custom image and then add in those packages as you want. And then again, just like I talked about Linux and Windows, database and app compatibility, it is still SQL Server. It's nothing special. It's not this weird version of SQL. Right now, we're focusing on SQL Linux containers, but I told you the Linux story was compatible. Now think of running just SQL Linux in a different way. That's the way you should think of these SQL Server containers.
All right. So let's keep going in terms of more details. What is behind the scenes,
Well, I mentioned about this magic about patching and upgrading, right? So I told you what a container is, like why you might want to use it. I talked about how SQL publishes it. It's pre-installed. So I've done this demonstration, and I'll show you in a slide, and then I'll just show you a demo of it, why people just think this is crazy. So when you install SQL Server databases with containers, to make sure that they're persistent, you put in something called a volume, which means the databases are on a persisted file on your host system. Now, what you see here in this diagram is the dark color is a container that's running, and the lighter colors are containers that are installed but idle, like they're not running, okay? So I've got CU8, that's one of our CUs we just did. It's running, and it's using SQL Server. Now, my goal is this. I would like to update the latest cumulative update of SQL Server. That's my goal. Now, this is weird. You don't go and patch that container. In fact, you can't even do it. What you do is you're going to switch to a new container pointing to your same databases because we're compatible between cumulative updates, okay? So here's what it looks like. You stop this container. Now the link with the database is gone, but the databases are still there. You start with the latest CU, and I just did an update. In a matter of like a minute, I have updated SQL Server.
That's easier and faster.
It's faster, easier, and it's consistent because I went and tested my latest CU really well, right? Now, here's your next question. I'll prompt you for the next question.
19.
Yeah, no, not 19. No. Actually, before I go to that one, what if you found a problem with this CU?
Yeah, roll back or maybe?
Yeah, here's what you do. You shut down that container, and you just point, and you start up the old one to the same databases, and you just roll back in a matter of minutes. And I could sit there and switch back and forth. So it's just a beautiful story of how you can now update SQL Server. Now, you did ask about 19, so it's possible. I could shut down this container, I could start up 19 to the same set of databases, and now I've simply upgraded SQL Server 19 with all my databases in a matter of minutes.
And same thing for the rollback too?
That's not there.
Yeah.
As you know, you cannot actually take databases and switch between major versions and go down level. But right now, it is a really great, efficient upgrade story.
So I asked you a tricky question.
You did ask me a tricky question. It's okay.
We'll keep going. It's good.
So let's talk a little bit about Kubernetes, and then I'd like to show a demo of that amazing patch story. So have you heard of Kubernetes, or have you kind of maybe heard in the marketplace?
Then again,
in the
one of
industry?
those terms, containers, Kubernetes. So that's next, you know.
Yeah,
Not
so
very clear.
and I was just at a major event, SQL Bits, where people were asking me about containers and Kubernetes. And one of the questions I got was, how do I do containers in production? Like, what would I do? Well, remember this story I just showed you about running a container? It's one thing to run like a single container or two. You can just do that in your VM and you can manage it and so forth. What if I had to do hundreds of containers? Or what if I want high availability for containers? How would I do that? Along comes this open source project, which is now a full-blown product called Kubernetes, out there in major different cloud and private cloud offerings like Azure Kubernetes Service or OpenShift, and we fully embrace it. And in fact, even in SQL 17, we supported this functionality. Now, Buck is going to do this amazing story for you tomorrow about what is Kubernetes, what is a node and a pod and all these different things. So I won't spend time doing that, but I'll show you a possible scenario that even in SQL 17 you can use Kubernetes. Flip back to the high availability message we talked about. We talked about failover cluster instance in Linux. We talked about availability groups. So what if you would like to do SQL Server failover without clustering software? Like you wouldn't have to install anything like Pacemaker and so forth. Kubernetes has a built-in model that supports that. And here's how it works. Kubernetes understands the health of these things called nodes and pods and containers. We're talking about containers now. We're talking about taking containers and running them at scale in a big infrastructure called Kubernetes. So this is an example where SQL Server as a container is running something called a pod. That's cool and interesting. Yeah. So what about that? Kubernetes also provides something called persistent volume, so my databases will survive any of these kind of scenarios. The other thing it provides is something called a load balancer service. Think of that like a virtual IP. Because what I want to do is I want to point my app to that load balancer, so no matter where SQL Server lives in this environment, I'll always be connected to the same endpoint, effectively, right? So here's what happens. Kubernetes says, uh-oh, there's a problem with the pod. There's a health problem. What do I do? What I do is I start up a SQL Server in a new pod on the same node. In this case, just think of nodes as VMs. That's an easy way to think about it. A couple of VMs, but Kubernetes orchestrating this. Now notice my load balancer got automatically redirected to my new pod. Yes. So I had to reconnect. I had a small brief period of reconnection, but SQL Server was started up, I reconnected, and the same databases are persisted because this is shared storage. Well, what if the node has a problem? No problem. Kubernetes will start up a new pod with SQL on a new node. I'm still pointing to the same set of databases, so it's a shared model and everything just works. This is built-in availability for SQL Server, right? Yeah. Through Kubernetes without installing clustering software and using this Kubernetes pod concept. Wow. It's pretty cool.
So this is really cool. So I'm going to interrupt for a moment because I have a live question from the audience.
Live questions.
You know, so what is the name of the Docker champion you mentioned?
So, you know, when you talk about Docker and so forth as a technology, I don't know if I remember the champion. I'm not sure what that question means, but remember that Docker itself as a technology runs across operating systems or in cloud environments. Right. So that's the container technology. Kubernetes is a technology that orchestrates all these containers that runs, for example, an Azure Kubernetes service, which is a service from Microsoft. Red has an OpenShift, or you can even just use kubeadm and build your own Kubernetes service. So, yeah, right. No problem. Let's keep going. All right. Well, that's the shared storage answer. What about availability groups, right? So, couple things. One is you want that read replica thing. You still want that, and I didn't show that in that first picture, okay? The other thing is I told you that the health of these nodes and pods are dictated based on the health of the pod or node, not on SQL. And remember, SQL has health detection built into failover clustering and availability groups. So we come along in 19, it's in preview now, and we build in that technology. We're integrating availability groups in with Kubernetes in a new way so we can make sure Kubernetes understands when should SQL fail over if there's a SQL problem. So we introduced this concept called an operator. That runs in a container. It does something amazing like this. Whoa. It actually spins up and configures for you a complete AG with primary and secondary replicas. Okay. And it includes containers for the health of SQL called AG agents. You take your app and you point it through a load balancer to the primary. That's what you normally do, right? But you want that secondary reading, so you point your reporting app through a load balancer to the secondaries. Now, actually in a pretty short amount of time on Kubernetes, you have a fully functional AG system, high availability, with SQL Server. That's pretty cool. Your primary going to your primary app to your primaries, your reporting app to your secondaries. But what happens if there's a problem, a failover? So if a problem happens on this primary, through the technology of availability groups, we'll work with Kubernetes, we'll actually fail over to one of the secondaries, the load balancer redirected to that new primary now, makes sense. And your old primary, which had a problem, could come back up as a secondary, and then the load balancer redirected to the secondary.
I see. So failover plus load balancing in a way, very seamlessly
Failover,
happening.
load balancing, integrate with availability groups, no clustering software installed. Kubernetes provides that infrastructure within that environment. And so, Sanjay, for your audience today, if you thought about new technologies that they may take a look at, it's containers and Kubernetes. That's kind of a direction for us. And you're going to see tomorrow when Buck and Anna get in and start talking about what's going on in 19, we're going to base a lot of things based on this.
All right, can we see a live demo?
Yeah, let's see it. I mean, you got to see this updating thing, kind of blows people's minds. So.
And this demo is a little bit hard to show, I heard.
It's not that bad, it's just hard to follow. So I'm using Azure Data Studio again because I just love this big orchestrated environment. I'm showing the example right here of a command to run a SQL container. I'm not going to go through all the syntax because that's in the workshop. So I'm just going to actually go run one of these by
Which
running
workshop are you talking about? aka.ms/?
Yeah, we'll show you at the very end here in the resources page. I've got a thing for that, but it's called SQL Workshops.
aka.ms/SQL Workshops.
Actually, just go search SQL Workshops.
All right.
On your search engine, and you'll find it.
Awesome.
And all those stuff's there, right? So I'm going to go run one of these things. Let me go log in here for a second. I just ran SQL Server. I just installed SQL Server. Wow. That was it. Remember the whole Linux thing I just did? I just did it right there.
That's the magic of Kubernetes.
That is the magic of containers.
And, yeah.
Now you're saying to yourself, okay, I don't believe you. You didn't really do it. Let's go use Azure Data Studio. Let's try to connect to it. So I'll connect to it. I'll put in the port number matched to it, and I'm done. There we go. I just connected to a container running SQL Linux. I'm ready to go.
So previous demo that you showed, there were a couple of more steps, but this time it's even easier.
Can you believe that? Is that just like insane? Okay, so let's do something else. Let's actually show the database compatibility. So this one, let me just make sure I have my demos here. Yeah, this one I'm going to copy my backup, step 2, into the container, okay? And step 3 is to do a restore. And I'm going to use the same restore commands I just used in SQL Server. In fact, let's go back here so you believe me. Here's my restore. This is running a SQL command with a restore syntax. You see this restore database syntax over here, right? Let me run that. And this is going to start restoring that database. So now if we go over here and look at our Explorer window, let me get this up a little bit so you can see it. There we go. Oops, I lost my contacts down here. Let me get that back. Yeah, there we go. Let's get this, let's just go full screen so I can get my, yeah, I lost a little bit of typing down there. I don't know what happened with that. So let's go back up here.
It's a live demo.
Hey, it is live, right? Yeah, I don't know why that won't refresh. Let me, yeah, the scrolling is giving me a
Start
problem.
again, maybe?
Yeah, let's blow that away. I mean, it's easy enough to connect back to a terminal again. Actually, you'll see how it works. So let's go here. Yeah, that's still not displaying right. Let's see. It's okay. I know how to run these commands, so I'll run it very easily. But let me go show you here. So I'm running in that containers. Let me refresh this. Yep. Now I come down here, because remember, I'm restored. There's wide world importers. Remember, I just restored it. Yeah. So I showed you the power of that doing it. But remember I told you I wanted to update this thing? Mm-hmm. Let's go back a directory. So if I go here to SQL Container Update, here is the update script itself right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the one container, and then I'm going to run a new one using the latest cumulative update. So I don't think I'm going to be able to see this in here. Let's do this. Let's restart Azure Data Studio. It's not a problem. Actually, we can just do it over here with this one. We already had this one going. So what we'll do is we'll go out of this terminal. This is live demos.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a secured shell into here. No problem. I'm back into the same container, right? Let's go to, let's see, let's go to this directory here. We got time. I was looking at my clock here, so. Yes. I'm just going to where I put my demos. Yeah. Okay. So this is, in fact, I'll go back over here. Okay. I don't have it listed for you here, right here. That's okay. So this is that command to shut down the container, running the current CU, go to the latest container by starting up the new one, and I'm just going to do an update. So let me go run it. Step 1, update. There I go. Put in your password. So this is going to go run. Now what it's going to do is it's going to shut down the one and start a new one up. This is the command. In fact, I'll go really brave over here. I'll try to connect to it. Can I do it? Let's try it. Let's try a new one here. So I'm going to go BW containers, port 1401. That's the port number. SQL login, SA, and put in my password. Now, oh yeah, sorry. It didn't like that password. Now here's the thing. We have to do a little small upgrade script step here. So it takes about a minute to actually go through this process. So I might get a failure there. I don't know. That should have been the right password.
Maybe caps lock?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't. I might have used a different password for that one. Let me go back here and see. I actually can connect to it through SQL command. So SQL command USA. And I want you to see this. Sorry, I got to put in the actual right host name here. So this is the server name, localhost 1401. And let me put the password in. I don't know what I did with that. Okay, hold on just 1 second here.
You tried to make it more secure.
I tried to make it more secure. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. What did I do here? Oh, sorry. There's my password. I used the wrong password. So too many passwords I'm managing, right? That's okay. We'll connect to it over here. Go back over here and do it. So BW containers, 1401. That's because I was using a SQL 17 system, and that's why I was using that password. So no problem. We'll just put that password here, remember it, and go. And there I am. I just updated. So, but here's the deal. I'm on the latest CU now. So within a minute, I shut down one container, pointed the same databases, started a new container with the latest CU, and I'm now connected, no problem.
Fantastic.
So that actually takes less time than that, but it took me a while to go remember my passwords and
Yes,
so
of
forth,
course.
right? Welcome to the new normal of patching SQL Server. I showed this at a major conference and everybody said, I don't believe you. I don't believe you actually did what you did. So I've got the workshops out there. You can try it yourself and see it. And then I've got the workshops to roll it back. I could have run a script where I shut down the current container with the latest bits, gone back and started the old container, which is still in my system but just idle, and I just go back and forth. Within a minute, I'm installing and patching SQL Server. It's kind of crazy.
Fantastic. So I have one more question, last question, from a live question from the audience.
Do it.
So will a SQL Server for Linux be available on the Linux subsystem?
The Linux subsystem for Windows that you're talking about? Yeah, right now it doesn't fully support running that system. We're certainly taking a look at it. The only official supported distributions right now for SQL totally are Red Hat, Ubuntu, and SUSE. But we'll probably take a look at that in the future. I think we need to find out from our community, is that something that we really need to be able to do in the future?
I see. And one more, is the Launchpad feature available in SQL Server for Linux?
Yeah, so I showed you that diagram of the Launchpad, which is machine learning services model, right? So in SQL 19, we're supporting SQL Server machine learning services. And so we've instrumented that same concept of using a Launchpad daemon, similar to in SQL Server and Windows. And you could even do it with containers.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Did you like the container stuff? It's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Of course. I mean, so many thanks for clarifying all these great things today, and thank you for your time, of course.
Problem.
And these are the resources, you have some good resources there.
Yeah, you just want to get started in this maybe, right? We showed you the SQL 17. You can go there to do it. If you want to do SQL Linux, here's some shortcuts that you can run for Linux or containers. And again, our workshops are out there. Everything I showed you today is in the workshop. You can just download through GitHub, run these things on any environment. The cool thing about containers, go do Docker for Windows if you're a Windows person. You don't have to have, I used a Linux VM. You can install Docker for Windows, run all my demos if you want to. And then I did, shameless, do I get a shameless plug here?
Of course.
I wrote a book.
Yes, of course.
So in the book, I do cover all these examples of Linux and containers and even Kubernetes. And here's the shortcut to go get the books from Apress Media and from Amazon.
And of course, folks can follow you on Twitter, Bob.
Yeah, at BobWarrenMS. I'm not great about it, but I do like to talk about our technology. And so you can go out there, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well, where I talk and post things going on with SQL Server.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching this video. Learn more about this and other topics at azure.com/SQLDW.